Nothing in life is random, not even the moment you hear these words. Just as a star cannot leave its orbit without an invisible gravitational pull guiding it, you have been led here, not out of curiosity, but because a design has already been set in motion. A quiet guidance, without noise, without display, yet precise to every beat. And within that stillness, a law is at work, the hidden law of the universe. This is not a vague concept for you to believe or disbelieve. It is a foundational mechanism, like gravity, like an electric field, an invisible force that is never absent. This law does not operate according to your fleeting emotions. It does not wait for your pleas, nor does it respond to complaints. It only responds precisely to the frequency you emit, no more, no less. Every thought, every emotion, every inner image you hold within is a command sent into the field of energy surrounding you, and that hidden law receives every command, silently turning them into circumstances, people, and events that return to you. It does not distinguish right from wrong. It does not judge morality. It does not analyze whether you are worthy or not. It simply fulfills its role, reflection. If you hold lack within, you are not only experiencing that feeling, you are transmitting a signal that says, "This is reality." And the universe, like a vast mirror, will multiply it back to you through sharper, more tangible experiences, not because it wants you to suffer, but because you have unknowingly agreed, "This is real in my world." And that hidden law only enforces what you have agreed upon. On the other hand, when you sustain an image of abundance not as a fanciful dream, but as a truth already present, then every cell in you begins to vibrate at a different frequency. And at that very moment, the hidden law of the universe starts to rearrange. No miracle required, only alignment. People, situations, opportunities, intuitions, all begin to shift because you have shifted first. You are not an observer standing outside the flow of life. You are the one adjusting that flow through the way you feel and think. And this is not a heavy burden of responsibility, but a power you were never taught to use correctly. You once thought that everything happening to you was due to fate, to others, to circumstances. But if you pause long enough, you will see a slender thread connecting the inner world and the outer world, and that thread is the hidden law. It continuously weaves your reality from the vibrations you send out each day. You may ask, does this mean I must control every thought of mine? The answer is no. You do not need control. You need intentional choice of your central emotion. Begin with a simple one, gratitude. Because when you feel gratitude, even for a moment, you are resetting your dominant carrier wave. And it is that carrier wave the hidden law responds to. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to force yourself to always be positive. But you must be aware that what you think, feel, and believe is not just an inner matter. It is the raw material the universe uses to build your tomorrow. Observe this. Some people always seem to encounter good luck, not because they were born favored, but because they assume life stands on their side. And that quiet assumption emits a signal so clear that everything around them must adjust to match it. That is the hidden law at work. Without bias, without omission, you too can move within that flow. No need for haste. Simply observe carefully what you are agreeing with. Every time you repeat a negative thought, you reinforce that reality. But each time you choose to hold a beautiful image, even without evidence, you open a new doorway where the hidden law begins to design a corresponding reality. Nothing miraculous happens in silence if you do not first change within. But once you adjust your central frequency, everything around you ceases to be rigid as you once believed. Life is not against you. It is waiting for a clear signal to respond. The hidden law does not require you to fully understand its mechanism. It only needs you to become present within yourself, present enough to notice, what am I sending out? And from that moment, you are no longer an observer. You have become the center of navigation. No complex technique is needed. Only remember, what you believe is real becomes real. What you see with your inner eye begins to imprint itself onto the outer world. The hidden law never rests. It works in dreams, in jokes, even in the moments you think you are most unconscious. Therefore, you cannot escape it. But you can use it intentionally, subtly, and wisely. You are living within a field of perfect feedback, And the moment you stop blaming the outside to turn inward is the moment you take back the entire blueprint of your life. That hidden law does not rewrite your life with magic. It only returns to you exactly what you have sent out. There are words you've once let slip without thinking. A sigh in the morning, a phrase repeated out of habit, "I'm so tired," "nothing's going to change," or simply, "that's life." These words may seem harmless, but in the architecture of the universe, they are command codes. Every sentence you speak doesn't just affect your mood in that moment, it is a silent command sent into the energy field surrounding you. And that field, called by many names, soul, subconscious, the universe, the source, the quantum field, is listening to every sound you make as a request. Words are the most clearly formed vibrations of your thoughts. They carry a specific frequency. They are broadcast not just through the mouth, but through your entire nervous system, your emotions, and the internal imagery that accompanies them. That's why every word is a resonant code. No sentence is just for fun. No word is only a joke. The universe doesn't discern whether you're being serious or not. It only reads the signal you're transmitting. And when that signal repeats enough times, it becomes the foundation of the reality you live in. If every morning you wake and tell yourself, "Today's going to be just as exhausting as every other day," you've just programmed your body to respond with fatigue. You've sent a silent order to your nervous system to brace itself for burnout. And you've also sent a signal to the universe, "Please keep this state going. I'm used to it." Words have the power to summon exactly what you describe, repeat exactly what you affirm, and amplify exactly what you agree to. But words, when used correctly, are also instruments of miracles. A single affirmation spoken from a place of calm can soothe chaos. A heartfelt thank you, even with no one to hear it, can shift your entire vibrational state. A solid declaration like, "I choose to trust the guidance of the universe," can alter the course of your life, not because the words themselves are magic, but because the speaker has activated a different frequency within. Words are sound. Sound is wave. Wave is vibration. And vibration is the native language of all structures that form the world. When you speak with full presence, your entire body becomes a transmission tower, and what you send out will inevitably return to you. That is a law beyond question. Many think words are just tools for social communication, but in the realm of the soul, words are sacred rituals. They are declarations of the frequency you've chosen to live in. Every time you say, "I'm not good enough," you're not just describing a feeling. You're planting a template into your energy field, and it will replicate according to what you've affirmed. And then you'll attract situations, people, and reactions that reinforce that belief. On the other hand, when you begin to use words as a tool of conscious selection, you are no longer a victim of circumstance. You become the architect of language for your own destiny. Instead of saying, "I don't know what to do," you say, "I'm opening up to see the path more clearly." Instead of repeating, "Everything is difficult," you choose, "I'm learning to move through challenges with deepening wisdom." Words aren't meant to deny reality, they are meant to shape its direction. Nothing is more powerful than a person who knows when to stay silent and when to speak words of intentional force. The masters of peace are not free from hardship, they have simply trained their speech into a stream of deliberate energy. They do not waste words. They do not scatter careless phrases. They choose each word like planting a seed, because they know every sound they emit is being recorded by the universe as a sacred request. You don't need to say much, but you need to say what is right. Speak from the frequency you want to live in. Speak as though what you say is already true, because words, when repeated with unshakable belief, become a pathway through dense reality, opening doors you thought never existed. When you begin to observe the language you use daily, you'll be astonished to realize why your life looks the way it does. You don't need to fix your entire life, you only need to refine the way you speak about it. And then, everything else will start to shift. Words are the key, but only when spoken with full presence, not in hollow repetition of an affirmation, but letting each word pass through your breath, your muscles, your gaze, your emotions, as if you're issuing a decree for a new reality to form from within. Next time you're about to say, "I can't change anything," pause, and choose a different sentence, one that may still feel awkward, but carries better energy like, I'm learning to change myself through the smallest things, because every new sentence is a shift in frequency. And you cannot change the channel of your life if you're still broadcasting the same old signal. Destiny does not operate on luck. It operates on the sound you emit every day. And your words, whether whispered in your mind or spoken aloud, are summoning commands the universe never ignores. Nothing appears in your life by chance. Not a single relationship, opportunity, failure, or miracle arrives as unexpectedly as you might think. Every outcome, whether you embrace it or reject it, is the fruit that sprouted from a seed once planted in your very own mind, in the moments you weren't paying attention. The mind is not a container for worries. It is a sacred garden, and like any garden, it cannot distinguish between good or bad seeds. It only knows how to grow. Any thought repeated, any emotion nourished long enough, will take root in that soil, and once rooted, it will seek to grow, to blossom, and to manifest in your physical life. You may have believed life was a series of things that happened to you, but in truth, that is only the visible layer of a complex system of cause and effect, where the mind is the command center. Every time you hold a thought long enough, you are planting a seed of energy, and that seed does not disappear. It sleeps, then suddenly sprouts when the conditions align. No one else does this. You planted it, and you are the one harvesting it. When someone repeats phrases like, I'm not good enough, I'm afraid to fail, I never get lucky, those are not just thoughts. They are toxic seeds being watered by emotion, imagination, and repetition. And soon, they begin to take root, turning into concrete experiences: rejection, failure, stagnation, loss of faith. All of it was seeded before in silence by the very person now facing it. But in the same way, someone who chooses to sow seeds of trust, gratitude, and abundance will harvest corresponding circumstances, not because they are lucky, but because they chose the right kind of seed. The mind shows no favoritism. It does not punish, nor does it reward. It simply reflects exactly what has been planted and nurtured from within. The danger is that most seed planting happens unconsciously. We fail to notice how we've been chewing on the same old thoughts for decades. We don't realize how many times we've let fear become a habit. We don't see that we ourselves have sown the dry, barren ground we now stand on, then blame life for not giving us more. But if you are awake enough to pause, to look within, you'll see that there is no such thing as true failure, only harvests responding accurately to the seeds you once planted. And once you recognize that, you can begin again. You can uproot the old seeds. You can choose new ones. You can change the climate of your mind to prepare for a different harvest. No need to wait for another lifetime. Just begin sowing differently today. You cannot stop the old seeds from sprouting, but you can choose not to water them further. Instead, begin each morning with a new image. An image of yourself living the state you long to be in, not because it has already happened, but because you are choosing to plant it now. Let your mind see images that are whole, abundant, worth living. Let it sense the fragrance of goodness even if the outside world hasn't changed yet. The miracle is, new seeds don't take decades to grow. When you plant them with presence, with focus, with deep faith, they begin to root quickly. And you will find yourself gradually shifting your speech, your thoughts, your perception. And when those shift, reality must shift with them. There are seeds you planted in childhood that still affect you. Beliefs inherited from parents, from society, from religion, all of them may still be quietly growing in the garden of your consciousness. You don't need to condemn them. You only need to face them and choose again. No one else can tend the garden of your mind for you. No one else can plant your seeds. This is your private land, and it is your unique power untouchable by anything outside. Starting today, choose a spiritual seed you wish to plant. Peace, abundance, understanding, love. And each time your thoughts stray from it, do not punish yourself. Gently guide them back, like a gardener tenderly redirecting a young sprout that hasn't yet found its strength. You don't need to try to erase all the old seeds. Let them wither on their own without being fed. Meanwhile, nurture the new shoots. A little each day, a thought at a time, a vision at a time. And soon, you'll step into the garden you yourself have cultivated, where every outcome is no longer a surprise, but the natural result of your inner choices. No one can take away what you've planted right. No one can stop the harvest if you've sown with awareness. And nothing can happen to you unless you once allowed it to sprout from within. Because every outcome was seeded beforehand. Because the mind is the seed, and you are the only one holding the bag. Everyone knows the power of gratitude, but most only use it as a reaction after something good happens. They say thank you when they receive, when they see, when they touch the result. However, if gratitude only comes after the good appears, then it is no longer a key. It is merely a response. What truly opens the door to everything you long for is gratitude that comes before you see it with your eyes, before you hold it in your hands, before the outside world shows even a hint that what you desire is arriving. This is not an emotional positivity trick. It is a law built into the foundation of all vibration. When you give thanks for something as if it has already happened, you are sending the universe a complete signal, a signal of someone who has, not someone who lacks. And that very signal is the strongest invitation for what you desire to take shape in the physical world. The universe does not respond to what you want, it responds to what you broadcast. And gratitude is the highest, strongest, clearest frequency of the I already have state. It is a wordless affirmation to the invisible realm. I fully trust that this is real. I am ready to live inside it. When you are grateful before, you are not merely attracting what you dream of, you are coming into full resonance with it. Picture a person standing before a closed door. One knocks nervously, unsure if anyone is on the other side, unsure if they will be let in. The other smiles, places their hand on the doorknob, and says thank you as if the door has already opened. That second person is the one who causes the door to swing wide open on its own, because they do not beg, they do not plead, they resonate, and that resonance is the password. Gratitude before is the act of someone who understands that everything begins from within. They don't wait for the outer world to give permission to feel whole. They ignite it from emotion, from imagination, from a personal decision, and then the world outside has no choice but to reflect that exact frequency back. You can begin practicing this right now. No conditions required, no specific reason needed. Choose something you are longing for, an opportunity, a love, a breakthrough, a healing, and instead of waiting, be grateful for it. Let the words, "Thank you for this already happening," become your spiritual breath. Say it in your mind, say it in your heart, say it in a state as if you are embracing that thing with your entire being. At first it may feel like you are pretending, but if you keep going, the emotion inside will begin to shift. And at that moment, you are no longer performing, you are living in advance, a piece of the reality that is already on its way. And that advanced living is the element that brings it into form. Every shortcut on the path of reality creation leads to the same destination, vibrational state. And no vibration is stronger, purer, more encompassing than gratitude. When you feel grateful, you are sending a signal that you are ready to receive. Your hands are open, no longer clenched. You have entered a state beyond control into surrender. Many pray out of fear. They plead from a sense of lack. They repeat their requests as if abandoned, and they wonder why the universe does not respond. It's not that the prayer is wrong, it's that the vibration is still, I don't have, I am helpless, I am cut off. Gratitude, on the other hand, asks for nothing. It is a primal, precise, unmistakable language. It comes from someone who understands, I am already living in the gift, even if my eyes haven't seen it yet. Practicing gratitude in advance does not require you to become artificially positive. It simply asks you to pause your demand for the outside to change and instead begin to shift the way you vibrate within. Spend a few minutes each day giving thanks for 3 things that haven't happened yet, you choose to believe are already present. It doesn't need to be grand, it just needs to be real. It can be, thank you for helping me find the right job. Thank you for my health returning. Thank you for the ease and abundance in my life. Then let the feeling carry you beyond the words. When gratitude becomes a habit, you'll begin to realize that the world is no longer a series of surprising events, but a consistent reflection of what you've been sending out. Doors that were once shut will begin to open, not because you knocked harder, but because you changed the password. And that password is, thank you. You don't have to see it to believe. Believe and give thanks first, and then you will see. That is the order of the universe. You don't imagine the outcome. You live in the truth of it beforehand, and that nothing can resist. Because gratitude in advance is the golden key, not because it is beautiful, but because it fits every lock in life. Everything you've ever seen, touched, or called reality was once just a thought, a formless possibility. Before it took shape, everything existed in the invisible. And what brought that possibility into the physical world was not proof, not logic, and certainly not external abundance. It was belief. Belief is not merely a pleasant emotional state. It is the first energetic action, the silent but formative decision that says, I choose to believe, even when I see nothing at all. In the structure of this world, evidence always comes after. Evidence is an outcome, not a cause. It does not appear to help you believe. It appears because you already believed. And that changes everything about how you move through your journey, not with cautious steps waiting for validation, but with steady steps from within, as if solid ground will appear beneath each footstep, even if all you see ahead is empty space. This is not blind optimism. It is a clear mechanism. Matter is formed from energy. Energy is organized by information. And the most powerful, most directive form of information is belief. When you believe in something so fully that you don't need proof, you are restructuring the energy field around it. You are making that thing denser in the field of reality until it becomes heavy enough to imprint itself onto physical life. You've believed in things that hadn't happened, and then they came true. You've doubted things that were going well, and then they disappeared. There's nothing mystical about this. It's just that you were never shown. Belief is the foundation, not the reward after success. When you believe you are worthy, you begin to treat yourself differently. And from that shift, every relationship, job, and decision around you must adjust. When you believe you'll make it through, your body shifts from defense to recovery, from tension to direction. And suddenly, you start to notice doors that were always there, but you couldn't see them while operating from the frequency of doubt. Belief doesn't instantly change reality, but it changes how you respond to reality. And your response is the signal sent back to the universe, letting it know what you wish to keep creating. You cannot fake belief. You cannot borrow it from someone else. Belief is a vibrational state you must generate yourself by choosing again. Choosing yourself, choosing your direction, regardless of what is happening outside. There will be times when you find yourself standing between two worlds. One is the unchanged external reality. The other is the clear inner image. And the space between those two is the training ground of belief. Not for you to suffer, but to learn how to hold steady to the vision you've chosen, even if no one sees it, even if nothing confirms it, even if all signs point the other way. When you can stay grounded in that empty space, the evidence begins to arrive like a guest, showing up exactly on time to a celebration you've prepared in advance. Evidence never comes to make you believe. It comes to confirm that you believed at the right moment, in the right way, on the right level. And the strange thing is, the less you need proof, the more proof you attract. Because true confidence doesn't come from data, it comes from a deep inner connection to something you know is real, even if the world hasn't seen it yet. True belief is not dependent on outcomes. It is a state of presence. It needs no reason to exist. It only needs to be chosen. And every time you choose to believe instead of waiting for proof, you are shifting reality in the most favorable direction. You are stepping ahead of life. You are not reacting. You are creating. Look back at the defining moments of your life, those times when you shifted what seemed impossible. You may not have called it belief then, but that was exactly what held you steady. That was the moment you didn't need anyone to agree, didn't need to see the full path, only needed to feel, I know it's coming. And through that feeling you stayed until the door opened. Not every belief brings instant results, but every lasting result is born from unwavering belief. Each time you return to doubt, you cut the signal. Each time you restore the inner image, you broadcast again. This is a silent exchange between you and the structure of the universe, where the strongest signal always receives the clearest response. So, if you're waiting for proof before you believe, you may be waiting a long time. But if you start believing as if it already exists, You leave reality with no choice but to reflect it. Not because you're dreaming, but because you've understood. In this game, belief is the first move. Everything else is just aftermath. No one can believe on your behalf. But when you begin to believe in a deep and unshakable way, the entire world will have no choice but to rearrange. Everything in the physical world is a reflection of an invisible vibrational layer, no exceptions. The life you're living didn't begin in the outer world. It began within, from the frequency you emit, from the image you hold tightly in your mind, from the emotional states you maintain without ever putting them into words. And the world does only one thing: it responds precisely to what you are. Frequency is not something mysterious or distant. It is how you feel each day, the waves of emotion you radiate, often without realizing it. Every person is a living transmitter, and just like a radio, you cannot receive a different song until you change the frequency. No matter how much you want, pray, or strive, if the frequency you're sending out does not match what you want to receive, the outcome cannot come. This is why so many people try to change their external circumstances, only to find everything returns to the way it was. They don't realize that the first thing to change isn't the environment, other people, or opportunities, but their inner imagery and the emotional frequency that goes with it. When you hold an image of failure, fear, or lack in your mind, even if you speak the opposite, the universe still receives the signal of the true frequency you are emitting. Inner imagery is not a game of fantasy. It is the template that energy will pour into. The more you repeat an image, the sharper it becomes in the invisible structure of reality. And once it is clear enough, stable enough, it will naturally turn into tangible experience, like water freezing into snow, like vapor condensing into rain. This process doesn't need to be witnessed. It only needs consistent maintenance. If you want to change reality, begin with the image you're quietly holding inside. That is where everything is born, not from external affirmations, not from fleeting motivation, but from a deep inner sense of what you believe is real. Imagine yourself as the artist painting your own reality, and the first strokes are always made in the space no one else can see. The danger is, if you don't consciously choose your inner images, then your past, your fears, and your habits will choose for you. And in that case, you'll relive the same cycles, repeat the same experiences, not because you want to, but because you've never changed the original image within. And the universe, with its perfect neutrality, will keep printing out exactly the version you carry. Emotional frequency is the ink. Inner imagery is the sketch. The outer result is the final print. Pay attention to the shades of emotion you feel when you think about the future you're aiming for. If there is doubt, you're diluting the frequency. If there's a feeling of not enough, you're sending out a signal of lack. If there's urgency, you're stepping out of the already have state. Only when you feel calm, whole, and secure within the image you've chosen will the world begin to realign to match that state. You can't trick frequency. The universe doesn't respond to words. It responds to vibration. And that vibration cannot come from shallow thought. It must come from deep awareness, from the knowing that the image you hold in your mind is no longer a vision, but a reality in the making. When you live as though it is already real, you collapse the distance between the invisible and the visible. It doesn't matter where you are right now. Frequency doesn't care about your starting point. It only responds to what you are emitting in this moment. That means you can begin changing your reality instantly. You don't have to wait for the week to end, the month to pass, or for the right moment to arrive. You only need to begin broadcasting a new frequency with a clearer, stronger, more vivid inner image. And if you hold it long enough, everything around you will have to shift to synchronize. A new life doesn't begin with a grand decision. It begins with a persistent image, with the moments when you choose to feel differently, even though there's no proof yet, only belief. With those quiet mornings when you close your eyes and see yourself living in the better version, not to escape, but to broadcast a new signal into the field. And once that signal is clear, nothing can stop the response from arriving. The world never argues with you. It only mirrors back exactly what you've sent. If you don't like the copy, don't blame the printer. Change the blueprint. Adjust the image in your mind. Elevate the emotional frequency you live in each day. And then, the external result will have no choice but to reflect it truthfully, precisely, and without fail. Prosperity doesn't come to those who cling. It comes to those who know how to let go. But letting go here doesn't mean giving up. It is a proper form of surrender, surrendering resistance, surrendering control, surrendering the habit of always wanting to force things to happen at the right time, in the right way, in the right shape. Because the universe does not operate by force, it operates by the subtle order of flow. That flow is always available, always moving, always finding its way to those who don't block it with fear, anxiety, or urgency. When you live in tension, trying to force everything to unfold on your personal schedule, you are damming the current. And then you think you lack luck, lack opportunity, lack support. But in truth, you're simply clenching your hands too tightly, leaving no space left to receive. Surrender is not about lying still and waiting. It is about moving gently, wisely, in the right timing, then relaxing enough for what you've sent out to be properly returned. Like someone throwing a boomerang, you don't need to chase it. You simply stay in a state of receiving, and the calmer you are, the more accurately it returns. Surrendering the right way begins with no longer trying to control the outcome. You still hold the inner image, still trust, still act, but you no longer panic when things don't arrive. You don't rush to change direction just because results are delayed, and you don't blame the circumstances, others, or yourself because you understand that the flow needs space to flow. No one can make a river move faster by shouting at it. Think about the most beautiful things that have ever happened in your life. Many of them came when you stopped trying so hard, when you were too tired to force anything, or when you finally let go of the weight of longing. That's when the flow could slip through the cracks. Not because you were passive, but because you stopped resisting. And that stopping wasn't weakness, it was trust, transformed into a refined intelligence. Surrendering the right way also means allowing yourself to admit that you don't need to control everything. You are not the architect of every tiny detail. You are the one who sends the signal, maintains the frequency, acts from inspiration, and then lets the universe do the rest. When you try to carry everything in your own hands, you choke the sacred space that life needs to arrange the miracle. The one who knows how to surrender properly is not indifferent. They are crystal clear about what they want, but they don't cling to the result as if they cannot live without it. They don't turn their dreams into burdens. They don't attach conditions to happiness. And because of that, they release themselves from the state of lack. They stand in the stream of prosperity like someone breathing in rhythm, not like someone drowning in effort. Force always carries the scent of fear, and fear is the signal that closes doors. Whereas proper surrender emits the scent of trust. Trust creates openness. Openness creates space, and space is the required condition for prosperity to pour in. The universe never floods a cup already full of worry. You can still work hard, still have clear goals, still pursue what you love, but you don't have to carry the fear that, if I don't succeed, I've failed. Because in that mindset, every action becomes a reaction, not a creation, not a choice, just a desperate attempt to outrun imagined pain. Try taking a step back. Examine all the areas where you're overly tense, the places where you say, I must have this, I must achieve this, it must happen now. And ask yourself, what would happen if I loosened just a little? If I believed everything arrives at the perfect time, how would I feel? If I stopped trying to force things into existence, would I start to see the path unfolding on its own? When you truly surrender, you'll realize that doors don't open because you knock harder, but because you're vibrating at the right level to walk through. Not by pushing more, but by flowing more. Not by speeding up, but by aligning your rhythm. Prosperity is not a reward for those who can endure the most. It is a response to those who can adjust the most, those who can keep the faith, act in rhythm, and most importantly, let go when they've done enough. In that release, the miracle is allowed to happen, not because you've stopped trying, but because you've created enough space for life to handle the rest. Every time you look at your life, your relationships, circumstances, opportunities, or challenges, don't ask, why is this happening to me? Instead ask, what am I broadcasting that the mirror reflects this way? Because the outer world is not an independent entity operating by its own will. It is a truthful, precise, and unfailing mirror, reflecting exactly the vibration you emit from within. If you see coldness, It may be because you are closing yourself off inside. If you see delay, perhaps hesitation still lingers within you. If you see repeated pain, perhaps you still believe you deserve to suffer. Life is not cruel to you. The mirror simply lacks the ability to reflect what you haven't sent out. The mirror does not know pity. It doesn't know how to encourage you. It does only one thing: replicate. And so, if you want to change what appears out there, there's no need to beg the mirror, no need to shout at life, and certainly no use in complaining that everything is always the same. Instead, adjust the only thing you truly have control over: the original image within. Some people constantly attract good opportunities, unexpected help, seemingly random luck. But if you look more closely, you'll see they're not trying to manipulate the outside world. They simply carry within them a very clear image that they deserve love, support, and a rich life. And that image doesn't need to be repeated in words. It is a state they carry everywhere, all the time. And the world responds to that, like an unavoidable reflex. Conversely, there are those who always feel abandoned, deceived, or unfairly treated. And the more they demand justice from the outside, the longer the injustice lingers. Because when you carry the frequency of mistrust, of doubt, of "I will be hurt again," the mirror can show nothing else. It simply says, "I will show you exactly what you believe is true." The hardest part is not changing the world. It's accepting that you created it. Not to blame yourself, but to reclaim your creative power. When you truly understand that everything is a reflection, you no longer need to ask life's permission to live better. You go inward, adjust, and watch your world gradually shift, not because the world suddenly became kinder, but because the mirror has just been cleared of dust. The mirror reflects in a peculiar order. It does not show what you think you're emitting. It reflects what you truly believe, even if that belief lies so deep you can't name it. That's why many people are surprised to find themselves stuck in the same loops. They've tried thinking positively, they've prayed, they've hoped. But deep down, the real image is still the victim, the rejected one, the not good enough one. And that's the image the mirror is working with. To change what's being reflected, you don't need a new thought. You need a new awareness strong enough to replace old beliefs. You need to feel differently, vibrate differently, live differently, not to impress anyone, but to send out a new signal. And when that frequency stabilizes, the mirror will adjust the image. The mirror never responds instantly to the first vibration. It waits for your consistency, waits for you not to revert to old states just because the outside hasn't changed yet. Because the first condition for the mirror to reflect a new image is that you must hold that image first, as if it were already true. No validation needed, no proof required, no agreement necessary. Begin to view everything in life as a measure of vibration. If money arrives and then disappears, what inside you is conflicting with receiving? If someone treats you coldly, what within you is saying you're not worth care? If all doors seem closed, what part of you is afraid to step into a new level of life? Don't blame the mirror. Adjust your gaze. And once you've truly adjusted, you won't need to say anything. Life will speak for you. The responses will become gentler, more open, more aligned. Not because others changed, but because you did. The mirror can do nothing else but reflect, with absolute honesty. The outer world has no separate consciousness working against you. It is simply the projection screen of what's happening inside you. And when you understand this, you no longer see yourself as a victim of circumstance. You become the artist, the director, the signal transmitter. You no longer need to change everyone and everything. You only need to change yourself, and the world will have no choice but to reflect that new version right back. Fear often wears the face of an enemy. But if you look deeper, you'll see it doesn't come to oppose you. It comes as a disguised doorway, a threshold that, only when you are brave enough to cross, reveals the light that has been waiting on the other side. Darkness is not something to be destroyed. It is something to be understood. For most of life, we learn to avoid fear, suppress emotions, ignore unnamed obsessions, but what we refuse to face never disappears. It simply sinks deeper into the unconscious, and from there, controls our lives from behind the curtain. You can pretend not to be afraid, but the frequency of fear still broadcasts, and the world continues to respond to it in the form of delays, limitations, or a sense of being blocked without knowing why. Here lies the paradox. Light does not arrive by running from darkness. It arrives when you turn around, open your eyes, and walk through. No fear holds any real power once you dare to face it. When you no longer shrink from discomfort, when you stop avoiding the memories that ache, when you are brave enough to ask, "What is this fear trying to help me see more clearly?" the darkness loses its terrifying shape. It returns to what it has always been, a signpost, not a sentence. Fear is not a destroyer. It is a powerful signal that you're standing on the edge of a breakthrough. If it weren't important, you wouldn't be afraid. If it weren't close to the truth, you wouldn't be shaken. What you most avoid is often where the key is hidden, but that key will not reveal itself to someone who is running. It opens only to the one calm enough to stand still. Think back to the moments when you overcame your deepest fears. At first, it felt like a wall, cold, motionless, overwhelming. But then, when you chose not to turn back and took one small step forward, you discovered it wasn't a wall, but a thin veil, and the moment you touched it, it dissolved. Behind it was an entirely new space, open, light, free, not because the world changed, but because you moved through your own inner filter. There's something few people realize. The brightest part of you always stands behind your largest shadow. The place you fear most, the part you've called weak, ugly, or not enough, is the very gateway to a primal power within you that has yet to be unleashed. Fear is the mask that truth wears to protect itself from shallow attention. It doesn't want to be touched by superficiality. It only reveals itself when you arrive with genuine presence. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is knowing the fear and walking anyway. It is standing in the vibration of uncertainty and still remaining present. It is no longer demanding certainty, but opening yourself to discovery. When you can do that, you don't just get past fear, you release a level of energy that has been trapped, and from that release, new currents begin to flow. Darkness is an essential part of the growth journey. No one arrives at clarity without walking through night. No one truly loves themselves without facing the parts they once rejected. And no one can guide others without first walking through their own valley. Every crack you've tried to cover is the very place light will enter first. If you're feeling afraid right now, that's not a sign to stop. It's an invitation to go deeper, more honestly, more bravely. You don't have to overcome fear immediately. Just stop running. Stop ignoring. Stop pretending you're fine when inside you feel chaos. Truth, once looked at directly, loses its manipulative power. It becomes simply a part that needs to be welcomed back into love. From the moment you dare to sit quietly with fear, you become your own guide. You're no longer pulled by old reflexes, no longer dominated by unconscious voices. You begin to shape your reality from a place of conscious choice, not reaction, and that changes the entire game. Fear is not the end point. It is the bend in the road. It is where the inner map gets redrawn. It is the moment you transition from the old self to a version that has never been lived. And for that reason, don't pray for fear to go away. Pray for enough light to walk through it. Not to destroy it, but to understand it, to learn from it, and ultimately to pass through it like mist, grateful that it led you all the way to the threshold. Every thought is a seed. Every emotion is water. Every action, no matter how small, is either sunlight or shadow, determining what in the garden of your inner world will grow. Life doesn't choose for you what will bloom. It simply multiplies whatever you water each day. The strange thing is that most people spend more time watering what they don't want to grow, worrying about failure, replaying negative scenarios, repeating worst-case stories, emotionally reliving old pain. And then they wonder, why does what I fear keep happening? Because they've been watering it, not just once, but through repetition, powered by the belief that it could happen. And so the soil of the mind receives the instruction, fertilizes it, nourishes it, until it grows into reality. The garden doesn't distinguish good from bad, positive from negative. It only knows how to grow whatever you plant and care for. And that's why gardening wisdom is the ability to choose what deserves to be watered. Not every seed you accidentally drop needs to be nurtured. Some should be left to dry out and disappear into forgetfulness. Some thoughts should only be glanced at, then allowed to drift away like clouds across the sky. Ask yourself, what am I watering each day? Is it belief in my own abilities, or doubt in every little thing? Is it a vision of an abundant life, or memories of failure? Is it gratitude for what I have, or envy for what I haven't achieved? The answer lies in the dominant emotion occupying your inner space. No complicated measurement needed, only honesty. And if you want to change the garden, don't tear everything down. Simply stop watering the weeds and start nurturing the seeds you truly want to grow. This doesn't require dramatic action. It begins with choosing different thoughts right now, choosing different words, choosing how you tell the story of your life. Every time you retell a narrative, you add energy to a certain seed, and soon, you'll find yourself living inside the garden shaped by that very seed. Gardening wisdom doesn't mean always thinking positively. It means being awake enough to discern which seeds are truly fruitful and which ones only lead you astray. Sometimes, you have to clear the old soil, dig out a few toxic roots, but you don't do it out of anger or panic. You do it because you know there can be no harvest if the precious seeds are crowded out by wild weeds. The truth is, you don't need to plant many new seeds. The good ones are already in you. Courage, creativity, love, strong intuition, deep wisdom. They are simply waiting for you to choose them as your center. Every time you spend time in stillness, in gratitude, in luminous inquiry, you're watering those seeds. And when they grow, they will outshine the weeds not through battle, but by becoming too vibrant, too powerful to be overshadowed. Don't worry if you occasionally water the wrong thing. The goal is not perfection, it's awareness and redirection. Every morning is a chance to choose again. Every minute of the day is a chance to switch the hand that holds the watering can. And every night is an opportunity to let the soil rest, to make room for new seeds to take root. If you want to live a rich life, you don't need to do more. You need to do better, more consciously, more mindfully. Be selective about what passes through the gate of your mind. Treat your attention like the precious resource it is, because wherever your attention goes, your energy flows. And wherever energy flows, life begins to grow. Finally, remember, this garden isn't just for your own delight. It's also where others may find inspiration. Every flower you help bloom is a reminder to someone that beauty can still grow from within. Every sweet fruit you harvest is proof that prosperity is real when you nourish the roots properly and water them consistently with love, with trust, and with the quiet, steady wisdom of the gardener within you. It's not that your dream is too big, it's that your logic is too small. It's not the vastness of your vision that leaves you breathless. It's the attempt to confine the infinite within the framework of what seems reasonable. The universe is not bound by what you've learned, witnessed, or been taught to call reality. It is not limited by your logic, and certainly not governed by the human formulas of addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division designed to control what we don't yet understand. Logic is a tool, but when you treat it as the ultimate limit, it becomes a chain. There are things that cannot be explained immediately, yet they operate with more precision than any law of physics. Some things seem paradoxical, but they are the only doorway to new levels of awareness, and only when you let go of the need to understand right now do you become spacious enough to receive the miracles that exist beyond your old thought structures. Some prayers are answered in ways you never anticipated. Some doors exist outside the maps you've drawn. Some detours that seem like wrong turns lead you somewhere deeper than you ever dreamed of reaching. None of these things would happen if you kept trying to master your life by forcing everything to be logical, to make sense, to match what worked last time. The universe doesn't care how you calculate. It responds to the depth of your vibration, to the alignment of your mind and frequency, to the feeling of readiness which doesn't require evidence. What you dream of doesn't need your logic to become real. It only needs you to stop resisting, to stop insisting, it can't happen unless I have enough money, unless someone helps, unless it's happened before, unless I know the outcome. These unless statements don't come from wisdom, they come from the fear of disappointment. But that very fear is the lock on the door where the miracle is knocking. Not because the miracle isn't real, but because you're using logic as a shield when it was only ever meant to be a compass, not a cage. If you want to live a life beyond limits, Accept that not everything will make sense to the mind. There will be times you must follow a vague but powerful feeling. Trust an image that has no proof. Step into a space no one has walked before. And when you do, you are not acting foolishly. You are walking with the intelligence of the universe, a force that will lead you past crowded roads to a path that's never existed until now. There comes a moment in the journey of anyone growing in consciousness, the moment they stop asking how and begin living as though it's already done. They no longer need logic to move forward. They only need the inner signal. And, strangely, that's when the most logical things begin to happen. Opportunities appear. The right people show up. Timing unfolds. Everything begins to make sense in ways the old mind could never have predicted. This is not about abandoning intelligence. It's about repositioning it. Logic is a servant, not a master. True wisdom is knowing when to use logic and when to step beyond it, when to analyze and when to trust, when to follow a plan and when to listen to the wider flow calling you from beyond all your calculations. Dreams don't come true because you found the right formula. Dreams come true because you tuned yourself to their frequency. When you live as if the dream is already forming, the universe has no choice but to complete the process. Not because you forced it, but because you aligned with the path that was already there. And when you step beyond the limits of your logic, you don't just expand what you can receive, you expand who you are. You become more flexible, more intuitive, more at ease. You stop getting tangled in old questions. You stop halting for lack of evidence. You become the gatekeeper of things that have no name yet. The one who lives as though the impossible is inevitable. This world runs on invisible forces, and logic is not the highest among them. Belief, clear intention, inner imagery, and emotional resonance, these are the true ingredients of reality. And when you understand this, you stop trying to explain everything. You begin to live more deeply, expand more freely, and most importantly, you become ready to receive what lies beyond your imagination. There is nothing wrong with not understanding right away. Don't force life to follow paths you already know. Let it open doors you never thought to dream of. And then, when you look back, you'll see what happened wasn't irrational. It was exact. It was elegant. It was aligned. But not according to your logic, according to a greater blueprint, where every good thing had already been written, just waiting for you to stop doubting so you could walk in. Amid the countless noises of the world, stillness is not emptiness. It is a living space where the subtlest signals begin to surface with clarity. When you stop trying to think, stop trying to control, stop interrupting the rhythm unfolding around you, that is when the universe begins to speak. Not with sound, but with knowing. Not with words, but with an undeniable sense of alignment. Stillness does not require you to disappear into the forest or shut the world out. It begins from within. It is the state you enter when you stop reacting out of habit, when you no longer chase every call from the outside, when you stop needing to fill every space with thought. At that moment, something strange begins to happen. The most important things stand out, not because they get louder, but because everything else has been cleared away. There are questions you once tried to answer through analysis, reasoning, reading more, and yet arrived nowhere, until you stopped, sat still, did nothing, thought nothing, demanded nothing. And from somewhere, an answer emerged, light as breath, clear as sunlight through still water. Not loud, but undeniable. And you knew, this is what I needed, not coming from memory, not from knowledge, but from a deeper place where stillness becomes the medium through which true wisdom rises. Stillness is not absence. It is the space into which truth can enter. It is the backdrop against which the sacred can be heard. Not because guidance wasn't always there, but because you were too busy to hear it, too hurried to feel it, too noisy inside to realize that the answer had always been waiting just beneath the surface of your racing mind. Every deep practice leads back to stillness. Prayer is not about saying as much as possible, it's about entering stillness after the final word. Meditation is not to produce a special experience, but to become empty enough to receive subtle signals. Listening is not waiting your turn to speak, but suspending the need to speak, so that you can understand what has not yet been said. All of this requires space. And stillness is that space, the space where everything truly valuable needs room to bloom. This world runs on filling, schedules, notifications, goals, content. Everything competes for your attention. But the most miraculous things aren't in what's highlighted. They live in the silences that get overlooked. When you move through enough noise, you begin to realize more information doesn't lead to wisdom, less interference does. Stillness isn't easy, because it forces you to face yourself without masks, without roles, without applause. Just you bare, raw, honest. But only then can you begin to see clearly what's real and what's illusion. What's the voice of your inner being and what's the echo of the world. And once you've tasted that, you'll stop being addicted to busyness. You'll stop needing to prove anything. You'll see that sometimes just being is enough. Stillness is not the destination. It is the tool, the medium, the essential state for reconnecting to your original flow. Because no connection can be made when there's too much static. Just like a radio, if you keep turning the dial, all you get is static. But when you stop on one frequency, pause at the right moment, what you're meant to hear comes through clear, true, and whole. Every miracle in human history, from creative inspiration and invention to moments of deep awakening, never arrived in noise. They came when people let go, paused, opened. They didn't come when someone tried to control everything. They came when someone let go of the wheel and allowed a greater intelligence to steer. Stillness is where what's looking for you can finally reach you. No need to knock, no need to break through. It only needs you to be quiet enough to be fully present. And there you'll realize everything that once worried you shrinks. Everything you thought you had to do becomes less urgent. Because you've reconnected with a greater order where every answer doesn't need to be spoken. And then, when you emerge from that stillness, you act differently. No longer rushed, no longer striving, no longer blindly following old patterns. Every step carries a power you can't quite name, because it doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from hearing more clearly. Hearing the voice that truly matters, not from others, not from books, but from the quiet center within you. There comes a point when you must stop asking for directions, not because you've reached the destination, but because you realize that all the maps you're holding were written for someone else. They may be useful for a portion of the path, but they cannot lead you to places no one has ever stepped foot in. And in that very moment, you begin to hear another kind of signal, not one broadcast by the world, but one rising from within, a soundless stirring, yet as clear as magnetic north, intuition. Intuition doesn't argue. It isn't loud. It doesn't explain, justify, or seek approval. But every time you listen to it, something clicks into place, like your whole body nodding in agreement, as if no further reasoning is needed, because deep down you know. And strangely, each time you trust that compass, the once vague path begins to reveal itself step by step. Intuition is not impulsive emotion. It doesn't arise from reaction. It is not born of fear or desire. It is a quiet knowing, beyond thought. A resonance from a deeper layer where there is no conflict, no competition, no need to prove anything. It is the part of you connected to universal intelligence, not through words, but through alignment. And each time you follow it, you are not merely finding a way, you are becoming the way itself. The inner compass does not operate linearly. It doesn't point to the shortest route, nor does it care for efficiency. It takes you where you need to go, even if that means turning, detouring, or pausing midway. But if you are brave enough to not force yourself through the old logic, you'll find that every twist has its reason, every delay is a design, and every fork leads you back to the center of yourself. There are times when you've crafted the perfect plan, prepared meticulously, and then a vague feeling makes you hesitate. You can't explain why, but you know. And if you listen, you'll avoid invisible wounds. You'll bypass traps disguised in attractive appearances. You'll arrive at the right place not because you're better, but because you didn't betray the inner call. Intuition is not a gift reserved for a chosen few. It is a natural ability, but one often drowned out by too much noise, by excessive advice, by habitual reaction, by old beliefs. To hear your inner compass again, sometimes you must peel back those layers, pause before acting, feel before analyzing, place your hand on your chest instead of the keyboard. When you live from intuition, you begin to choose differently, not because you're intentionally going against the crowd, but because you no longer chase what no longer fits. You no longer cling to paths that worked for someone else. You no longer need someone to affirm that you're on the right track, because you already have your own compass. And it only works when you're willing to be quiet, to slow down, to trust. This compass won't take you to the easiest place, but it will take you to the truest place. A place where you must grow, must overcome, must become a deeper version of yourself. It doesn't promise freedom from all challenge, but it ensures that every challenge will be meaningful, and every footprint you leave behind will shape a real path, not copied, not borrowed. There is a deep safety in living by intuition. Not the safety of always being right, but the safety of always being aligned with yourself. You are no longer pulled by others' expectations, no longer dazzled by glittering choices, no longer shaken when no one agrees, because you don't need them. You have a signal steady, grounded, resilient, transmitting from within, unaffected by circumstance. And when you live this way long enough, you begin to see the miracle. Intuition isn't just right for you, it's right for those you touch. Because when you live in alignment, you unintentionally open paths for others. You inspire not through advice, but through presence. And you become living proof of a truth. Living by intuition doesn't make you lost. It is the way you return to the deepest map, the one written by your soul, not by fear. The world will always try to hand you new directions, but no map is wider than you, no instruction clearer than the whisper from your quiet center, and no path will ever be sustainable unless you walk it from the place within that already knows. There are moments when everything you once believed to be solid collapses. Carefully laid plans suddenly fall apart. Relationships that once felt unchangeable become unfamiliar. Emotions swirl, beliefs waver. Nothing seems to hold still, and you find yourself in the middle of a storm, with nothing left to cling to. But if you look deeply, you will see this is not the end. It is the beginning of a rebirth. The sacred storm does not come to punish. It comes to sweep away what no longer fits. It does not destroy you. It merely strips away the old shell you've worn for too long. It takes from you what you once believed you couldn't live without, to show you that not only can you live without it, but you can live more truthfully afterward. The storm is not lost. It knows exactly where it's going. And if you don't resist it, but walk through it with trust, you'll emerge on the other side as someone new, lighter, clearer, deeper. Chaos is the sign of something about to be restructured. Every system nearing a higher order goes through instability. Just like a painting being redone, you must erase before you repaint. In the moment where form is unclear, everything looks messy. But that mess is the preparation for a higher order. And so chaos is not failure. It is a new layer of growth emerging from the unconscious. The truth is, without chaos, many would never leave their comfort zones. They would never question, never listen to their true inner voice. They would continue living out worn roles, inherited beliefs, and inauthentic relationships, until the storm comes shattering the walls they built to avoid facing themselves. And when there's nowhere left to hide, the truth begins to surface. In the sacred storm, the first thing you lose is the illusion of control. Every attempt to hold things together will only exhaust you. But if you can surrender, if you accept that you cannot control everything, then at that very moment, a new space will open within you. A space where you begin to ask, if I'm no longer who I was, then who am I? And that's when rebirth begins, not by adding more, but by shedding. No awakening comes from perfect calm. No true transformation happens without crossing a dark zone. But here's the miracle. The dark does not intend to harm you. It is simply where the light hasn't been invited yet. And the storm is the hand that pushes you into that place not to punish, but to reignite a flame you had forgotten existed. Because only in the darkness can you see the light that comes from within. The sacred storm will teach you what no doctrine ever could. It will make you pause mid-journey and place your hand over your heart. It leaves you no option but to listen. And as the inner voice grows louder, you will realize you were the one who summoned the storm. Not to self-destruct, but to return. To return to the version of you that has never been defined, never been dimmed by expectation or fear. Rebirth is not about starting life over. It is about living your true life for the first time. And that process is never gentle, like the snake shedding its skin, the tree dropping its leaves to grow, or the earth trembling to welcome a new season. So it is with you. When your inner world becomes too cramped with old versions of yourself, you'll need a force strong enough to break through. The storm is that force. And you are the one who called it in when your soul knew you were ready for something greater. If you are in the storm, don't rush to pray for it to pass. Ask instead, what is being reborn through me? If everything feels disordered, don't try to rearrange it back into the old order. Make space for the new to enter. Trust that you are not lost. You are being rebuilt. And you are not alone. Every evolving soul has passed through this region, not to conquer it, but to become themselves from within it. And one day, looking back, you will be grateful for the storm, not because it was pleasant, but because it was honest. It didn't let you continue living a lie. It pulled you out of the lowlands of your soul and set you onto the path you had avoided for too long. And because of that, you became more real, more powerful, more luminous, not because you survived the storm, but because you let it touch you and stayed open. The world does not treat you the way you wish. It treats you exactly as you are treating yourself. If there is still doubt within you about your worth, you will attract doubtful gazes. If deep down you still feel not good enough, not deserving, then every relationship you enter will reflect that same mirror, not because others do not love you, but because you have not truly loved yourself. Love does not begin from the outside. It begins with how you see yourself each morning when you wake up, with the voice you use in your inner dialogue, with the way you look at yourself in moments of silence. If the love you give yourself is still conditional, still judgmental, still harsh, then the love from others, no matter how sincere, can only reach a certain depth. No one can enter your heart deeper than the depth you allow. The mirror of the heart is a powerful symbol. Every person you meet, every reaction you receive, is a reflection of your inner world. Not to place blame, but to become aware, because you cannot change the mirror by repainting the image in it. You must change the one who is looking in. When you start to love yourself without needing a reason, not because you've done something right, not because you've achieved anything, but simply because you are you, that mirror begins to change its hue. Loving people appear, warm things approach, not by accident, but by precise reflection. Loving yourself does not mean indulging. It does not mean shutting out the world. It is not arrogance or isolation. It is the gentle companionship with yourself, both at your highest and when you stumble. It is not turning your back on yourself in your most vulnerable moments. It is knowing that the kindness you seek from others must first be seeded within. The truth is, you are teaching the world how to treat you day by day, moment by moment, through the way you speak to yourself, through the boundaries you set, through what you allow or do not allow to unfold. If you constantly forgive others but never forgive yourself, then that love is already missing a half, and unbalanced love never nurtures. To truly love yourself, you must learn to see both your light and your shadow without redefining your worth based on either. The light shows you your strength and potential. The shadow shows you that you are still alive, still learning, still unfolding. When you stop comparing, stop blaming, stop living by someone else's standards, love begins to have space to grow. The paradox is that only when you are full within can you love someone without needing them to fill your emptiness. You no longer enter a relationship out of fear of loneliness, but to share fullness. You no longer cling because of need, but stay because of choice. You no longer sacrifice from lack, but from wholeness. And such love truly heals because it does not demand, does not bind, does not control. It simply radiates. There is a deep freedom that comes when you love yourself enough. You are no longer dependent on others' reactions. You no longer judge yourself through someone else's eyes. You no longer need to be chosen, to be validated, to be confirmed, because you have already chosen yourself. And that is the first choice that unlocks every other door. The mirror of the heart never lies. It reflects not just your surface, but your most hidden beliefs. If you wish to see a gentler, kinder, more compassionate world, begin by seeing yourself that way. No one can do that for you. No one can love you more than you are willing to love yourself. Love is not a feeling. It is a decision made again and again each day. It is a way of being, a habit of understanding. And with every small act, from caring for your body, listening to your emotions, to speaking loving words to yourself, you are rewriting how the world operates around you. Change does not begin by finding the right person. It begins when you become the right person to yourself. Then, without searching, you begin to attract. Without convincing, you begin to resonate. Without clinging, you begin to be held not because you lack, but because you have become a place full enough for love to dwell. Not every thought takes form, but every reality begins with a thought that carries enough weight, and that weight is called faith. A fleeting thought is like a cloud. It drifts across the sky of the mind, leaves behind a trace of emotion, then disappears. But when you believe in it, when you invest your living energy into it, that cloud turns into solid ground, into something with shape, direction, and magnetism, and the world begins to move in response. Faith is not desire, nor is it hope. It is an inner agreement, deep and steady like a foundation. It is a voice that doesn't need to shout, yet stands firm like a boulder. When you truly believe in something, you don't need to convince others. You don't need signs or evidence. You walk as if it already exists, and the very way you walk sends out a signal that invites reality to reshape itself to match that belief. If a thought is a seed, then faith is what allows that seed to break through hard soil, to surpass time, and sprout. A seed without the light of faith will remain dormant even if it holds immense potential. But the moment that light is present, the moment you believe long enough and deep enough, what once felt distant begins to take shape. There is no bridge shorter between imagination and reality than the one named faith. Everyone dreams. But not everyone lives in their dream. The difference lies in just one thing: whether or not they have enough faith. Because this world does not operate on seeing is believing. It works in reverse: believe, then you will see. Every pioneering step, every invention, every great change began with someone who dared to believe in what no one else could yet see. Dared to believe, dared to act, until the entire world had no choice but to look. Ironically, most of what we believe isn't even chosen by us. We believe in limitations because we were taught from childhood not to dream too big. We believe in our flaws because someone repeated them often enough. We believe that life is struggle, that love is fragile, that money is hard to earn, and because we believe, we live accordingly without knowing that we can completely choose again. Faith is not immutable. It is programmed, and it can be rewritten. The only question is, what are you believing in? And does that belief serve your life? If not, do you have the courage to change it? Because changing your belief is like stepping from one shore onto a bridge suspended in nothingness. No handrails, no shortcuts, only inner guidance and one steady step. When you begin to believe in something new, that you are worthy, that you are capable, that you are loved, that you are being guided at first, there is only silence. No evidence, no confirmation. And in that silence, you will see clearly whether you truly believe or are merely hoping. Because true faith needs no proof. It stands still in the storm without trembling. It does not ask when, does not demand how much, does not need to know why. It only knows one thing: it already island. Faith does not eliminate challenges, but it changes how you face them. When you believe that everything arrives at the right time, you no longer panic when things are delayed. When you believe that you have value, you no longer need praise to exist. When you believe that life is supporting you, you no longer feel alone. And each of those small beliefs, day by day, is silently redrawing the map of the reality you live in. The hardest part is not believing in something beautiful. It's continuing to believe when that beauty hasn't shown up yet. Holding on to faith when nothing supports it is a high act of creation. It's like building a bridge in the fog yet still placing the next stone. Because you know, only when the bridge is complete can what you believe walk across and become real in the physical world. The universe doesn't need you to prove that what you want is reasonable. It only needs you to believe, not with your mind but with your state of being. Through every action you choose each day, through the way you speak about yourself, through the patience you give the process, through the steadiness in your gestures, your words, and your silences, at that point, you are no longer imagining. You are creating. You are walking across a bridge. You built yourself the bridge, connecting the world of ideas with visible reality. And then one day, what you once saw only within will appear before your eyes, not because of luck, not because of miracles, but because you held on to an unseen truth long enough that it had no choice but to take form. That is not coincidence. That is the inevitable result of faith. Every time you speak, you activate a chain of reactions that cannot be undone. Sound doesn't stop at the air. It is a vibration that carries messages deep into the invisible fabric of the world. And what few realize is this: the words you use every day don't merely describe reality. They are creating it. A sentence contains energy, and that energy doesn't distinguish between true or false, serious or joking, intentional or accidental. The universe doesn't care whether you meant it or not. It only recognizes the vibration you've released. If you repeat often enough phrases like, "I'm so tired," "I can't do it," or "I never get lucky," those words don't just disappear into nothingness. They form a frequency, and that frequency will begin attracting exactly the situations that make you tired, powerless, and unlucky. Speech is the extended echo of the mind. When you speak something aloud, you've given it permission to cross the boundary of your inner world and enter the frequency of matter. It doesn't matter whether you believe strongly or not, whether it was intentional or not. Just by repeating it, the words will gradually carve themselves into your subconscious. And from there, the subconscious will begin redesigning how you act, feel, and attract everything in your life. In other words, the words you use are commands to your brain, and the brain doesn't argue. It doesn't judge whether you're joking or serious. It just records and executes. If you often tell yourself, "I'm terrible at this," your brain will reduce creative energy in that area. If you say, "I'm just not lucky with money," your brain will unconsciously slow down every behavior that might lead to wealth. And slowly, those words become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the incredible thing is, you can reverse that entire current just by changing your vocabulary. When you begin saying things like, "I'm learning to attract with ease," "I'm opening up to goodness," or "I deserve extraordinary things," you're not merely comforting yourself, you are reprogramming reality. Positive speech is not about denying difficulty. It is about choosing to adjust your vibration so you don't get stuck in your circumstance. When you say, "I know everything is working out for my good," you don't necessarily need to understand what's happening, but you're sending a signal to the universe that you choose to trust. And that vibration softens reality. It reduces resistance. There is a great paradox in life. We often use speech to complain, to seek sympathy, to recount hardships, not realizing that every time we do, we reinforce the very reality we want to escape. We retell the problem over and over again, and each time we do, we seal it deeper into the structure of our world. We can't let go, not because the event hasn't passed, but because our words haven't stopped. Mastering your words doesn't mean becoming fake or forcing constant optimism. It means becoming conscious. It means choosing your vocabulary with the awareness that each word is a blueprint. If you knew your next sentence would be a seed sown into the soil of the world, would you plant limitation or expansion, fear or faith, scarcity or abundance? A timely affirmation can shift an entire day. A self-reminder at the right moment can pull you out of a negative spiral. A sentence you speak to yourself consistently, patiently, can become a new roadmap for your life. And it doesn't have to be loud. It only needs honesty, emotion, presence. When that's there, every sound carries summoning power. If you start seeing every word you say as a vibration code, you will stop speaking carelessly. You won't diminish yourself with toxic jokes. You won't spread fear through pessimistic predictions. You won't sabotage your energy just for a bit of attention. You will be silent when needed and speak when ready, because you'll know your voice is not weak. It has weight. It leaves a trace. And the most wonderful part is, you don't need anyone's permission to begin using your words deliberately again. You can start today, with every sentence you speak to yourself, with every word you choose when describing your emotions, with how you name a day, a challenge, an opportunity. Because in every situation, there is always one thing you can control: the words you choose to speak. The universe responds to your frequency, not your circumstances. And that frequency is woven from the words you use daily. When you speak as if what you want is already present, you draw that vibration closer to reality. When you choose words as if you are already the person you wish to become, you shorten the distance between where you are and where you're going. No one else needs to hear what you say aloud, but the universe always hears. The subconscious always records, and reality always reflects. Everything you desire is waiting to be summoned, but it cannot come closer unless you emit a clear signal. In the world of energy, it's not the strongest desire that wins, it's the clearest one. Clarity does not mean forcing, nor is it about excessive effort. It is a state of purity, where you know exactly what you choose without hesitation, without distraction, without compromise. Clarity is light, and that light is like a focal point that burns through all ambiguity, gathering scattered frequencies into a single unified wave. When that frequency becomes pure and strong enough, it pierces through layers of vibration and reaches the invisible door that has been waiting for you on a higher dimension. Most people don't lack desire. They lack focus. They think about one thing for a few minutes, then let their minds drift to something else. They want change but still hold on to a swarm of doubts. They say, "I want this," while quietly thinking, "Will it even happen?" And because of that, the universe cannot respond not out of refusal, but because it isn't clear what you've truly chosen. This world doesn't operate on words. It operates on frequency, and frequency cannot be faked. You can say you want peace, but if your heart is in turmoil, that vibration is what gets transmitted. You can write your goals 100 times, but if each time you write them, you doubt yourself, then those words only create static, not clarity. Clarity doesn't come from detailed planning. It comes from inner simplification. It's when you're no longer trapped between too many choices. When you stop saying, "Let's see," and start saying, "I've decided." When you quit collecting more information and begin acting from what you already know, especially when you stop looking for reasons to postpone what truly matters. The human mind tends to complicate everything. It loves to search, analyze, theorize, but that process dilutes your original energy. You don't need all the answers to be clear. You only need one strong decision: "I choose this." And from that decision, you walk step by step in alignment. Everything else will adjust itself. Clarity is also not about controlling every detail. On the contrary, the clearer you are, the more you can let go. Because when you know what you want, you no longer need to micromanage everything. You allow the force of attraction to pull the necessary pieces toward you. No need to interfere at every stage. No need to manipulate reality. You simply keep your frequency free from distortion. If you closely observe those who consistently attract the extraordinary, you'll notice one thing in common: they carry certainty. Not arrogant certainty, but the quiet confidence of someone who has chosen no turning back, no divided focus, no second guessing. And the universe always responds quickly to such people, not because they are special, but because they don't emit conflicting signals. Every day you step into the world as a broadcast tower. Each thought, emotion, and word you speak is a strand of vibrational code. If that code changes constantly, your signal will get lost in the noise. But if that code is consistent day after day, action after action, unaffected by circumstances, then nothing can stop what you desire from drawing closer. Clarity doesn't come from the outside world. It doesn't come from others' answers or from circumstances becoming clearer. It comes from within, from the moment you decide to stop waiting for certainty and begin creating it through your own choosing. You cannot summon what you want if you're still hesitating. The universe does not respond to "maybe," "hopefully," or "let's try." It responds to "I have chosen." When you are unclear, your signal is weak. But when you are clear, your signal is sharp as a laser, and that laser can pierce through layer upon layer of reality to carve open a new path. And in every area, love, work, health, money, clarity is always the first step to unlocking. Clarity helps you recognize what truly matters. It helps you say no to what doesn't align. It helps you distinguish between opportunity and distraction. It helps you maintain inner stillness, even when the outside world is chaotic. Nothing can be drawn in without focus. Nothing can crystallize if your energy is being pulled in every direction. And nothing can be born if you're not truly clear about what you're calling forth. When you dare to declare to the universe, not just with words, but with your entire state of being, "This is what I choose," and I am ready for it. Then you don't need to know when or how or through whom. You only need to know it's on its way. There is something more powerful than control, and that is alignment. Life is not a machine for you to operate. It's a piece of music that never stops playing, and you can't change the song by shouting over it. You can only change how you feel by learning how to dance with its rhythm. Those who resist life often end up exhausted, while those who learn to catch the beat move lightly, gracefully, and surprisingly more effectively than any rigid plan. Destiny does not arrive through strain, but through harmony. When you stop demanding that life unfold exactly according to your script, you begin to hear its true heartbeat. This is not the abandonment of will, but the height of wisdom, knowing when to move forward, when to step back, and when to stay still, so you don't get in the way of something greater already unfolding. Have you noticed that the most beautiful things often arrive when you least expect them? Not when you're gripping tightly, but when you take a single aligned step and a door opens. Because life has a rhythm, like the tide, like the heartbeat, like the breath, and you don't need to create it. You only need to sense it and step in time. Those who slow down and listen inwardly often act less but achieve more. They aren't caught in the whirlwind of, do it now, finish it fast, control everything. They wait for the right moment to plant a seed. They speak only when the moment is ripe, make decisions when the timing is precise, send a message when the wind is still. They don't rush into storms. They wait for the winds to calm, then raise the sail. This is not passivity. It is the art of living knowing you are not alone in this journey. There is a current wiser than your personal intelligence at work, and rather than pushing against it, you can dance with it. When you force things to happen according to your plan, you are using effort. When you flow with the rhythm of destiny, you are using force. Effort can be exhausted, but force never runs out. Effort belongs to the individual. Force belongs to the universe. When you align both, life becomes miraculously uncalculated. The rhythm of destiny is not random. It has its own logic, but not the linear logic of mathematics. It's the logic of intuition, of ripeness, of timing. And to catch that rhythm, you don't need to try harder. You need to become stiller. Observe nature. A tree does not bloom because it tries. It blooms because it is the season. Birds don't migrate out of fear. They move because they sense the seasonal shift in the air. And just like that, your life has its own rhythm. If you move too soon, you fall out of sync. If you wait too long out of fear, you miss the moment. But when you trust, listen, and act at the right time, you step right into favorable winds. Strangely, when you stop rushing, everything comes faster. When you stop forcing, what you've been waiting for finds its way to you. Because you're no longer emitting resistance, you're now radiating alignment. Alignment doesn't mean surrendering to powerlessness. It means acting from a place that is not driven by fear. It means moving in harmony with the beat, not against it. It means no longer asking, what must I do to get it? But instead, who must I become to be invited in? Major transformation doesn't come from grand actions. It comes from very small movements made at the right moment, like a dancer lifting a foot to the rhythm, like a surfer leaning ever so slightly to ride the wave's crest. And you too don't need to overexert. You only need to move in time. And to move in time, you must grow still, because rhythm is not found in noise, but in the quiet, not in continuous motion, but in the deep breath between movements. When you stop acting from fear and begin acting from inspiration, you enter the dance of destiny. Those who succeed are not the ones who do more. They are the ones who do things right. They don't force life to answer. They ask the question, then open themselves to receive. They don't demand the world to bend to them. They synchronize with a greater movement, and that is why every door opens. Don't force life, because you can't, but you can feel it. And once you do, you no longer need reasons to act. You only need one well-timed movement, and everything shifts. Don't rush. Don't strain. Don't go against the current. Dance. Breathe with the rhythm. Walk as if every movement is part of the music. Life does not need your control. It only needs your presence wholehearted and right on time. Opportunity does not come from luck. It comes from readiness. And true readiness does not lie in how many plans you have, how many skills you possess, or how many connections you hold, but in whether your heart is open or not. A closed heart can stand right before a miracle and still not see it. A closed heart can hear opportunity knocking, but lacks the trust to open the door. Only when you open without defenses, without prejudice, without carrying old disappointments, can life begin to place into your hands the gifts it has long prepared. Receiving is not passive. It is a deep act of trust. It is when you no longer shut your heart because the past once hurt you. It is when you no longer reject help just to prove you are strong enough. It is when you no longer hesitate to accept just because you were once turned away. Because you understand. You do not need to control everything that happens. You only need to stay open so that goodness can come close. Many people stand right at the threshold of transformation but do not step in. Not because they lack ability, but because they have not opened their hearts. When you close yourself off, you not only block what wants to enter, but also what wants to flow out. You hold on tightly to fear, and in doing so, you also hold back opportunity. You grip control so firmly that your hands are too full to receive anything new. And then you wonder why nothing changes, even though you've tried so hard. Opening your heart doesn't require blind faith. It simply asks that you set aside your doubts long enough to see that life is not against you, as you once believed. It is not closed. It is waiting for a door in you to open. A person with an open heart sees light where others see darkness. They recognize the message within the hardship. They can hear even the softest voice of intuition because they are not quick to dismiss it. But someone who is closed off sees danger in everything. They doubt even compliments. They treat opportunity with suspicion. They think they are protecting themselves, but in truth, they are missing the very flow of life. Opening your heart is a life skill, and like any other skill, it takes practice. You practice by admitting you don't know everything, by saying yes to new things, even when they feel unfamiliar, by acknowledging that sometimes you've kept the door closed too long, not because you were bad, but because you were once hurt. But today, you can choose differently. The secret to receiving lies in no longer resisting the form in which life chooses to arrive. It may come in a shape you didn't expect, an invitation from a stranger, a crisis that seems unfavorable, a change that makes you feel out of control. But if your heart is still open, you'll see that all of these are only appearances. Beneath them always is an opportunity to grow. Opening your heart also means accepting that you are worthy, because many people reject good things not because they don't want them, but because they don't believe they deserve them. They carry a quiet belief, I'm not good enough to receive. But you don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to achieve anything to be given something. You only need to be willing to receive with a heart that understands every good thing is already finding its way back to you. Life does not lack opportunity. It lacks hearts open enough to receive it. You don't need to run around chasing luck. You only need to stop closing the door. To open your heart is to say, I allow goodness to come to me in its own way, in its own time. And when you say this from the heart, you no longer have to compete. You become a natural magnet. Everything meant for you will find its way not by knocking loudly, but by tapping where you've quietly prepared yourself to listen. When you open your heart, you also become more pleasant to others, because you're no longer defensive, no longer competing, no longer viewing life as a battle. You begin to see people as they are, not as reflections of your old wounds. And in that state, you become the door through which others, too, can step into the light. To receive is a noble act. It asks you to let go of control, to stop needing to understand everything, and to accept. There are those who burn brightly, only to be extinguished by a few light winds. They begin with blazing passion, with bold declarations, with ambitious goals. But then, just a few days or weeks later, everything goes quiet. Not because they're not talented enough, but because they don't understand a simple principle. True power doesn't lie in how fiercely you burn, but in your refusal to go out. Perseverance, that is what surpasses genius, outlasts luck, and overcomes all doubt. The world doesn't lack good ideas. It doesn't lack inspiring beginnings. What the world lacks is people who see things through. People who keep going when the initial light has faded, when the crowd has dispersed, when results are nowhere in sight. People who don't need to shine to survive, but who persist like a small flame burning through the long night, quiet, but never extinguished. Perseverance is the art of keeping the fire alive when no one is watching. It's continuing when there's no applause. It's moving forward even when every part of you wants to give up. And strangely, it is in those very moments that a new kind of strength is born, not from impulsive passion, but from a quiet will that needs no proof, no validation, a strength that can only come from within. The steady flame doesn't depend on inspiration, because inspiration is a fickle gift. It comes and goes with the tides of emotion. The steady flame is fueled by commitment, a commitment that says, no matter how today goes, I will still do my part. No matter the mood swings, no matter the praise or criticism, I will still keep the promise I made to myself, and I will do it not because I have to, but because I have become the kind of person who does. The persistent flame doesn't need to set the world on fire. It only needs to stay warm enough to keep you going, to light your path in the dark, to sustain the life of what you're building. Maybe it's a project, a dream, a new life, or simply a better version of yourself. Whatever it is, it will not be born out of a single burst. It needs time, and time needs you not to quit. Think of how many times you've started, then stopped. How many times you began with excitement but quit when boredom crept in. And be honest, if you had just held on a little longer, maybe you would have seen the result. But you can't blame yourself, because no one ever taught you that success doesn't come from one great push but from 1,000 small steps repeated every day. You don't need to change your whole life in a day. You just need to keep relighting the flame every time it flickers. Don't smother it with doubt. Don't bury it with procrastination. Just keep it alive, even if only a tiny spark. And then, day by day, you'll witness something miraculous. That flame grows, not with a bang, but with the steady rhythm of your persistence. The persistent aren't people who don't get tired. They are simply people who don't allow fatigue to become a reason to stop. They know how to rest, but they don't quit. They may pause, but they don't give up. They have nothing to prove because they understand that with each day they continue, they are one step closer to what they long for. The world will test you with failure, with silence, with delay. But none of these are meant to defeat you. They only want to see whether you are persistent enough to be worthy of what you're calling in. Because the universe doesn't reward the best starter, it rewards the one who doesn't give up. Persistence isn't flashy. It won't make you stand out right away. But it keeps you around long enough to witness what others gave up before seeing. And in that quiet endurance, you become the very person you once admired, a steady, trustworthy, unwavering soul. Don't worry if today doesn't feel grand. Just do the small task you promised yourself, and tomorrow repeat it, and the next day still the same. One day, you'll look back and be amazed. How did I get this far? Power doesn't lie in intensity. It lies in not going out. There comes a moment when you no longer try to control everything, not because you are tired, but because you begin to sense a greater rhythm, a silent yet powerful current moving through all things, all situations, every twist in life. And when you stop resisting, stop trying to steer, stop straining to dictate every turn, you merge with that current, not surrendering in defeat, but aligning in awareness, not giving up, but waking up. The sacred union does not come from forceful effort, but from becoming transparent. Transparent with yourself, with your emotions, with your intuition, with the subtle signals the universe always sends but which are often drowned out by the noise of logic. When you are transparent, you are no longer a separate object drifting in a chaotic world. You become part of the river. You no longer swim against it. You drift, but you are not lost. You let the water carry you, yet you are never without direction. Merging with the flow does not mean you stop dreaming. On the contrary, it's when you dream most true to your being. Because when you are one with the universe, everything you desire no longer comes from the ego's craving, but from the soul's calling. And so, your dreams are no longer in conflict with the flow, they are part of the flow itself. There are moments when you feel like you're failing. All doors close, all signs are vague. But if you look closely, this is actually guidance. Just as a stream suddenly changes course to avoid hidden rocks, life redirects you away from what you could not foresee. And only when you stop trying to understand with the mind and begin to feel with the heart will you see the completeness in every seemingly random shift. The sacred union is also where you no longer see yourself as separate from everything around you. You look at someone and see a part of yourself in them. You listen to life and feel the shared pulse of existence. It's no longer me and the world, but a gentle unity, a state where all personal boundaries melt away, making room for an expanded self where you are wholly yourself and also a fragment of the whole. When you live in that union, decisions become clear. You no longer agonize over right or wrong, should or shouldn't. You simply listen, and what needs to be done reveals itself not through calculation, but through resonance. Just as trees know when to bloom, birds know when to migrate, your heart knows when to act. And you begin to live as though you are guided not by fear, but by a deep trust in the flow running beneath all appearances. This union doesn't require you to retreat to the mountains or leave the world behind. It happens in your everyday breath, when you wash dishes without turmoil in your mind, when you speak to someone without hidden agendas, when you work with full presence, when you stop asking, "What do I get from this?" and begin to ask, "What does this want from me?" And then, the most magical thing happens. You stop searching for miracles. You become the miracle. Every step you take is in harmony with the breath of the universe. Every thought you think becomes a blessing sent into the vibrational web of the world. Everything you touch carries a frequency of healing, not because you intend it, but because you have become one with the source of all that is good. You no longer need to force yourself to be strong, no longer need to strain to prove yourself, no longer need to fear being left behind, because you know no one is ahead or behind on this river. Each person simply needs to awaken in time, so as not to drift aimlessly. And if you are ready to remember, to open, to resonate, then there is nothing more you need to do. Just be fully yourself, whole, honest, and clear. That is the sacred union. No rituals required, no formulas needed, just a depth of presence so profound that you can hear the whisper of the universe and recognize it as your own voice.